Hello everyone, and welcome back. This is another one of my monthly member question and answers. As a thank you to the members who choose to support this channel and the videos I make here, once a month I take questions from them and answer them during the course of this stream. If you, person watching this, would like to ask me a question, well then, become a member and get it in the chat, and I'll try to answer it before we get to the end of this. Yeah, that's the long and short of what we're all here for. Let's get into the questions, starting with one from Louis Strau, which is not really a question, but more of a curse, as they describe it. And what they were sharing was, let me make sure this pulls up right. What they were sharing was this interview right here with the founder and creator of Liberland. What is Liberland, you might sensibly ask? And the answer is about 3 square miles near the Danube River in a place that is somewhat disputed. You see, Serbia says that that is not their land, and Croatia claims it's an area of dispute. The person behind this that Louis decided to introduce me to apparently believes they can claim that land, put a flag up, and as a result, they now have a country. And it's very much a libertarian country in, let's say, all the ways you would expect. The Wikipedia article on them has some fascinating details about the back and forth they have experienced at their border with Croatia, with the Croatian authorities repeatedly seeming to want to not allow people to access Liberland. Besides that, we also have some fun documents on their own website that we're going to take a quick look at. Before we do, though, I do want to say that Christopher Belk, who's a lawyer who does a lot of work for venture capital stuff and private equity stuff, as far as I can tell, did get an article published in a 2015 edition of the Michigan Journal of International Law, which is apparently a student-run law journal. And in this article, he makes a relatively brief argument that Liberland has lived up to the general international law expectations of what makes something a state and should be recognized. The reason I think Louis sent it to me is because there's a little bit of a crypto angle. You can see them getting interviewed here on the Crypto Coin Show, which presumably is one of my competitors, but is also not a thing I have ever heard of. In this podcast, which I have not listened to and we are not watching today. Don't even suggest it, chat. Don't get any ideas. We're not watching it. They direct towards a few other things I want to highlight. There is their Bitcoin Miami edition of their newspaper. And in this edition of their newspaper, they talk about how they are developing what they call a DAG, or Decentralized Autonomous Government. They are claiming that they can give you e-citizenship, despite no one recognizing Liberland as a country. And they claim to have a government fueled by Bitcoin. So, why is it? There we go. Besides that, I was also sent a page on travel advice for them, and we'll get to that in a second. Let's go back to the newspaper. In 2015, Liberland was the first country in the world to adopt Bitcoin as its official currency. Emphasizing its commitment to freedom of choice, the nascent nation has understood that it won't compel anyone to use a specific means of exchange or store of value. However, this adoption signifies three important developments: the use of BTC for official governmental purposes, the promotion and proliferation of BTC and Lightning Network-based payment solutions, and the commitment to hold state reserves, once it's a state, in Bitcoin. They are apparently launching their own wallet because that's a thing you need to do. And they say that their financial future is Bitcoin. They are pioneering decentralized autonomous government, which is not a real thing. Each citizen becomes a shareholder in the country, and I'm sure there's a way blockchains can be used for that. Let me tell you. They're also doing seasteading. They claim this land, but also they're seasteading, I guess because Croatia keeps cutting off their border. On that note, let's look at the travel advice section I was sent. Specifically, we're going to start with concerning the police. Engage courteously with police officials and be on your best behavior. These interactions can shape Liberland's future. If you encounter any issues with the police, don't panic. Video or audio record them because you have a right to do so, even if told otherwise by the police presence. Though keep in mind, you can't video on the premises of a border crossing or police station, and try to avoid filming their faces. In the event of a problematic encounter, you should just start saying only yes or no things. You must show them your documents, but you may not want to, and this is point number 5, let them take your last travel document, because that could be bad. Don't resist them though, and if you hold citizenship in Liberland, keep telling the police that you're a Liberland citizen. That's step 6. They're going to love when you do that. The personal requirements are, thank God, be above 18 years of age is on there, and be of sound mind, which, whatever. Be in good health, prepared to spend time in nature, because there's no infrastructure, like no water, no electricity, nothing. Then we have how to enter. Declare your trip by filling out the visa form. Consider sharing a ride. Bring your passport. Avoid the Bettina crossing. Do not mention Liberland. Non-EU and especially US individuals should avoid the border crossing into Serbia. If you're not from Liberland, well then, you're going to need to stay on liberty. But, well, there's a problem that they're not talking about here, and that is concerning the boat Liberty. They published on September 28th originally that the boat was in trouble and that they had ended up in a dispute with the Croatian police over where the boat was supposed to be registered and what that meant legally for Liberland. Sometimes these disputes with Croatian police result in Liberland publishing pieces like "Brutal, Croatia invades Liberland," saying that a private company under orders from the Croatian government came in and tore down some of the houses that make up Liberland. So yeah, that's Liberland. I don't know. I think if you want to really understand Liberland, you should look at the blockchain-enabled smart city that Cass and I made a podcast about. And the name of our podcast is Innovated Blockchain City. So I'm just going to send a link to that in the chat for you all so you can really learn my opinion on these smart cities. But the long and short of it is this seems somewhere between a joke and a libertarian wet dream. They're doing something not because they think it's good governance, but because they think they'll get a lot of coverage for it, and they think they should be able to do this. Getting back to the other questions now. Carrie Cole asked if I could discuss the Trump fraud cases. What does the dissolution of the businesses mean, and can the Trump org start over elsewhere? I can't discuss the Trump fraud cases in detail. I haven't gone deep enough on them to really be able to go through that. I do know that the dissolution of these specific entities is not the end of the Trump organization, because what's colloquially referred to as the Trump organization, as is true for many like corporate entities, is actually dozens or more entities, and only a small number of those are actually affected by this agreement. more broadly, yes, the Trump org can and will continue to start over elsewhere, and they will continue doing many of the same things the Trump organization has been doing. Also, yeah, Brandon, I think that a Narnia lamppost would be... I think Narnia might be safer than Liberland, and that's saying something based on those books. Carrie also asked if I can discuss the 60 Minutes interview with Michael Lewis, and I can. It's not fully in depth yet. His book is supposed to be delivered to me tomorrow. I intend to read it. Cass, my co-host for Crypto Critics Corner, I know intends to review it for Protos. We are considering other discussions of the material or other ways we can kind of handle or discuss it. I also linked in the description for this video a playlist of the Crypto Critics Corner videos about FTX, Alameda Research, and Sam Bankman-Fried, because many of those are going to be relevant. Right now, what it seems like from the interview, and again, it's a little early to tell for sure, but it seems like Michael Lewis bought a little too hard into Sam Bankman-Fried's construction of events. And we'll get into this a little bit, I think, when we get to Zachary's question here. But I think that he lost sight of the bigger picture of what this story looked like and what it meant. And you can see this. There's a moment in the 60 Minutes interview where he talks about how FTX would still be going if there wasn't a run on the bank. But I think like that fundamentally misses the point, because FTX was not supposed to be a runnable structure. Exchanges should not be able to experience runs because they should always have all of the assets they're supposed to. And so misunderstandings or misrepresentations or confusion about that kind of thing give me a foreboding sense that suggests to me that he may have bought into Sam Bankman-Fried's narratives, especially about his intentions. And I worry that once he believed Sam was well-intentioned, he gave a pass on many of the other red flags he encountered in the process of trying to write this book. I'll have more thorough thoughts on it after I get a chance to really go through the book in detail. In the meantime, I'm going to suggest, if you want a book about this topic, you should read Number Grow Up by Zeke Faux. And we did an interview with him for Crypto Critics Corner. You should go check that out as well. Moving on, Zachary Prokowski, thank you for signing up as a member today. I appreciate that support. Asked me, how did SBF's whole "we named it Alameda to trick East Asian banks to get in on the kimchi premium story" not bank fraud? Because it sounds like they're intentionally being materially misleading. And I would say it seems to me in that story they were being materially misleading. Again, I referred to the playlist of all of our videos on those topics in the description if you want a really detailed look at it. But the long and short of it is, it seems like Sam Bankman-Fried, FTX, and Alameda Research were regularly in the habit of misrepresenting themselves and their business in order to maintain access to banking. And I think that that interview where he gives that away, he's talking about the Japanese premium, not the Korean premium, but the point still stands. He kind of gave away that they were having exactly this kind of problem, and that they were experiencing exactly this kind of issue and solving it in this way that seems like it has to be fraud. Like, it's troubling to come up, it's challenging, to come up with other explanations, good faith explanations for what it was supposed to be. And I think kind of that is the biggest frustration people are having with some of the coverage they've seen of Sam Bankman-Fried and stuff since the collapse, is that it seems so obviously like fraud. And there are these interviews of him, the Bloomberg one with Matt Levine, this one where he's talking about the Japanese premium, where he seems to give away that it's fraud. And so that is why I personally have gotten mad at certain interviewers and people doing coverage of him after this collapse, is because it felt so obvious to me that what we were seeing was this fraudulent behavior, or at the very least, this behavior that should be absolutely unacceptable for a multi-billion-dollar financial institution. So I guess check out my playlist of other videos about FTX, Alameda Research, and Sam Bankman-Fried, because we go over in detail that kind of thing and all of the many problems with those people and entities. Our most recent episode about Sam Bankman-Fried's parents is pretty good, and I highly, highly recommend you check that one out. Looking at the chat here, Brandon asked if I think this book is going to end up doing tangible damage to Michael Lewis's rep. And I'm really struggling with this personally because I love Michael Lewis's writings. I loved Liar's Poker, Moneyball, the big one, The Big Short. That's the one I meant. And the one I often go out of my way to recommend, one of his less appreciated books called The Fifth Risk, which was about some of the failings of the Trump administration when they were first coming into power, and how like their inability to build up like the institutional abilities was one of the frames that you kind of needed to understand what was going on. And so I am frustrated and disappointed to see these interviews so far on the SBF situation, and also the situation on the Michael or Tui family situation, where I really think he should have put some of his history with the Tui family aside and perhaps paid more attention to some of the discussion of manipulation and exploitation that Orr was actually raising. And so those things are really hurting my opinion of him. But more broadly, I think we need to remember that anyone listening to this stream right now, compared to the average person, probably has a much higher than normal interest in this kind of niche topic. Most people are looking for a story, and most of the subjects who Michael Lewis would be interested in may even be more amenable to being interviewed, having read this kind of positive telling of this story. And so I think that that is going to contribute as well. Yeah, and Brandon's pointing out that there is a pre-existing relationship here. There was some reporting, I think it was from The Guardian, that kind of talks about the network that Michael Lewis tends to tap to write this kind of book, and very often it's kind of an extension of friends of people he has previously covered and things like that. And so I think that using that kind of circle has allowed him to get this kind of incredible access to many of these institutions and people, and as a byproduct of that, he has had the opportunity to cover these incredible stories. But I think he's often going in not with the goal of like being this person I'm covering is doing something bad, but by kind of wanting to loiter to this near this person you're already close to and find a good story to tell. So yeah, broadly, that's kind of how I feel about that. It looks like that's all the questions. I'm going to hang out here for about 60 seconds more to give you all a second to get them in. I also want to say one more time to all my members who are here today, thank you very much for supporting this channel and the videos I make here. I know many of them are kind of niche or out there, a little bit different than a lot of the other stuff they do, and knowing you all still support that and want to see that kind of thing is really exciting for me, because I love being able to cover some of these weirder, more out there things that aren't going to fit on Crypto Critics Corner or aren't going to fit on like an outlet that's really focused on trying to get ahead there. Yeah, Carrie again highlighted that he bought into kind of the distracted genius angle. I think part of what it is Michael Lewis loves the archetype of the bold contrarian who is right when other people are wrong. And I sympathize, because one of the things I love so much is being right when other people are wrong. I love it a dangerous amount. I'm more okay. Like, I'm willing to sacrifice being wrong when other people are right a certain amount of the time in order to be right when people are wrong a larger amount of the time than most people. And I have to regularly like fight this tendency in my head, because that kind of contrarianism leads you to being wrong when other folks are right too often. It's like my strength as a writer, as an investigator, as someone who looks into these things. But if I don't keep a leash on it, it controls me. And so I worry he buys too much into the type of person who is that type of contrarian. And I get it, because it is so incredibly appealing. On that note, one more time, thank you all. And I'm going to wrap this up.